who, for the record, is in the conference room here with myself and Delegate Valentine.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Heavenly Father, we come to you today asking for your guidance and wisdom as we do the important work of the House of Delegates today. Help us engage in meaningful discussion, working for the people of Maryland, in the strength of your name. Amen.
Thank you, Delegate. It should be a fairly short meeting. We only have two official items on the agenda, and the first, we welcome the folks from Department of Legislative Services to present to us the basically the overview of state aid to Washington County. Good morning, folks. I'll turn the meeting over to you.
Okay, good morning. With me today is Valerie Monroe and Arnold Aja. They're part of the state aid team. And Arnold is going to share the report with you on the screen. And I'm just going to briefly go through some of the key highlights of the report. If you turn to page 1, you can see that state funding accounts for a large portion of the state budget, the state funding to local governments. It's around 33% of general funds and around 26% of all state funds. And if you turn to page 2, you can see that in FY25, local governments receive around $10.8 billion in funding. Most of this funding is targeted to the public school system, around $8.2 billion, or around 76% of state funds goes directly to the local boards of education. Retirement payments account for around $1 billion, or around 9%. The funding that goes to the county governments and the municipalities is around $1 billion, or around 9.4% of total state aid. This is a $53 million increase this year, or a 5.5% increase. If you turn to page 3, it gives you a snapshot of by county, the funding increases that will be provided to each jurisdiction. You can see Washington County will receive around $306 million. This is a $15 million increase from the prior year, or a 5.1% increase, which is slightly above the state average. When you look at funding on a per capita basis, Washington County ranks 8th. It gets around $2,000 in state funding per resident. Around 70% of our state funds that goes back to local government incorporates a local wealth measure, which tries to ensure and promote fiscal equity among the jurisdictions. You can see that state aid ranges from less than $1,000 in Talbot County on the Eastern Shore to almost $3,000 per capita in Baltimore City and Caroline County. If you turn to page 4, it kind of breaks down the state funding by unit of local government. As you can see for Washington County, of $306 million that will be provided to local governments in Washington County, around $250 million will go to the local school system. Around $12.1 million will go back to the county governments and municipalities. You also see that $16.2 million will go to the local community college, and the local library system will get $1.7 million, and the local health departments would get $4.8 million. Page 5 basically shows you the funding that was provided in the current fiscal year, FY24. And then page 6 kind of breaks down the dollar increases that local governments are expected to receive next year. And as you can see, of the $15 million in increased funding for Washington County local governments, around $10.5 million will go directly back to the local governments, and around $4.3 million are retirement payments that the state government makes on behalf of the local governments, primarily for teachers' retirement. You can see that the public school system will get most of the increases of $10.3 million, while county and municipal governments will get an increase of around $500,000. And page 7 breaks down the information on a percentage basis. We're now going to focus more specifically on certain programs related to county and municipal governments. And if you turn to page 11, it will give you some key points on the police aid formula. And then page 12 actually shows you the amount of funding that will be going to Washington County this year for police aid. And this is around $1.5 million, or around $10 per capita. These funds are shared by both the Washington County Sheriff's Department as well as municipal police departments within Washington County. Page 13 kind of breaks down the different funding components of the police aid formula, and most of the funding for the program is either based on population density or the county's population. Around 12% of the funding is based on municipal sworn officers, and you can see that in Washington County, that's a much larger component of the program than in most jurisdictions. That is due to the numerous municipalities in Washington County, and particularly the Hagerstown Police Department, which gets a significant portion of the funding. Page 14 kind of breaks down the police aid enhancement funding that is provided to local governments. And this is basically the third year that this program has been provided to local governments. And as you can see, Washington County will get around $1.1 million in police aid enhancements. And this funding is based on the total violent crime offenses that occurs in the jurisdiction. And for FY25, it's based on offenses in calendar year 2022. Okay, the next page, let's turn to page 16, provides you information on, well, let's go back to page 15. 15 also provides you with information on targeted crime grant funding. You can see that the vast majority of this funding is targeted to Baltimore City and Prince George's County. However, there are several statewide initiatives that Washington County may be eligible to receive. Page 16 and 17 provides information on the Fire and Rescue Aid Program. And as you can see on page 17, Washington County will receive around $336,000 in funding under this program. And page 18 shows you the allocation on how the funding is provided. Page 19 will provide you with information on local health department funding. And here you can see that Washington County will get around $4.8 million in funding. The next slide gives you some key points on the local highway user revenue program. And here you can see that on page 22, it gives you a trend on funding for Washington County under this program. As you can see, back in FY21, Washington County got around $4.4 million in local highway user revenues. And in FY25, it has increased to $6.7 million. The next page shows the breakdown under the program. And as you can see that for FY25, the county government will receive around $3 million in funding, and the municipal governments will receive around $3.6 million. Now, what's important to note about this program is that legislation was passed that was slowly increasing funding. If we go back to page 20, Arnold, it kind of gives you a couple of highlights there. Under current law, funding under the program was supposed to increase through FY27. The share of the gasoline motor vehicle revenue account that is shared between the state and also for Baltimore City and the county municipal governments, all of that was increasing till you get to FY26. And then in FY27, the funding stays the same. However, with the Budget and Reconciliation Act, there's a proposal this year to revert the funding levels back to the FY24 levels beginning in FY26. So accordingly, highway user revenues will decrease both in FY 26 and in FY 27. And the projections for reductions in Washington County is around $1.6 million in funding reductions in both FY 26 and FY 27. So that is something to think about. This provision has to be approved by the General Assembly. It's not a guaranteed reduction. It has to be voted on and approved through the Budget Reconciliation Act. But the funding going forward for both Washington County and the municipalities in Washington County under this program is scheduled to be reduced beginning in FY 26. And once again, the funding reduction is around $1.6 million. Our next item deals with the disparity grant program, and this is a very important program for Washington County. You can see on page 25, funding under this program has significantly been reduced in recent years. You can see that in FY 22, Washington County received around $8.4 million in funding under the disparity grant program. Funding was reduced in 23 to 3.8 million, and again in 24 and 25 to where now it's at $2.4 million. So what is driving this decrease? If you go to page 24, it kind of gives you a brief discussion of the changes under the program. So basically what has happened is that there is a minimum funding level under the program that was established in 2013 that guarantees all disparity grant counties a certain percentage of funding under the program. And it's based on your local income tax rate. Jurisdictions that imposes the maximum 3.2% rate is guaranteed 75% of funding under the program. If your income tax rate is only 3%, you are guaranteed 40% under the program. And if your income tax rate is 2.8% to 3%, you're guaranteed 20%. And so this is the main factor why Washington County's aid has decreased. If you go back to 25, Washington County in calendar year 21 imposed the maximum 3.2% local income tax rate. So that guaranteed them at least $8.4 million under the program. But in calendar year 2022, Washington County government reduced the local income tax rate from 3.2% to 3%. Therefore, they were only guaranteed 40% of their funding and not 75%. So in FY23, when the income tax was reduced, their funding decreased from $9.6 million to $7.1 million under the program. And they lost they would have been guaranteed $7.2 million. By having their income tax rate reduced, they were only guaranteed $3.8 million. This resulted in a $3.3 million funding reduction in that year. When you look at 24, the county government reduced the income tax rate down to 2.95%, which only ensured that they received 20% of their guaranteed funding. This reduced their funding under the program from $11.2 million to only $2.9 million, which is an $8.2 million funding reduction. And once again, for FY25, the local income tax rate that's currently in place for calendar year 2024 is 2.95%, which reduces the county's funding from $8.9 million to only $2.4 million. This is a $6.5 million funding loss. So when you look at what has happened over the 3 years, Washington County has consistently reduced the local income tax rate from 3.2% to 3% in 22 to 2.9% in 23 and 24. This has an impact on state funding under the Disparity Grant Program, because the minimum funding level under this program is based on your local income tax rate. So over the last 3 years, FY23 to FY25, by reducing the local income tax rate below 3.2%, state funding to Washington County under this program has been decreased by $18.1 million. So that is something to think about when you're setting local tax rates. The income tax rate has an impact on this program. Your local property tax rate does not. So if you're looking at the two main taxing sources for local governments, it's your property tax and your local income tax. The local income tax affects funding for disparity grant counties. Reducing your local property tax rate has no impact on this formula at all. So that's just something to think about going forward with your local officials, is when you're looking at tax changes, you need to make sure that what local tax you change, how it affects your state funding.
Can I ask you, what was the number in fiscal year 25 had the rate been at 3.2? I missed that. Was it 11 million?
Right. In FY25, the current year, if the rate was at 3.2%, the county would have received $8.9 million in funding.
Okay, thank you.
Right. And we're going to put all of this information we presented today in speaking points, and we're going to have them probably posted on our webpage probably by Monday, so everyone will be able to have the information. We are now going to shift our focus to talk about education, because that's the main component of state funding to local government. So if we turn to page 30, you will see that total state education aid is around $9.1 billion. This is a very significant commitment to the state government, to public school system. This includes both direct aid that goes directly to the local school system and teachers' retirement payments. And as you can see, Washington County will get $269 million. This is around $12,589 on a per pupil basis. And Washington County is ranked 8th in the state. Washington County Public Schools receives more state aid than the state average. And it also, then on page 31, it breaks it down by direct aid that goes directly to the local school system of $249 million and $20 million in retirement payments. And as you can see that for direct aid, Washington County is still ranked number 8. For retirement payments, unlike direct aid, retirement payments do not incorporate a local wealth measure. It is just based on the teacher salary base and the pension contribution rate. So there you can see that, like Washington County's public schools is ranked 23rd. It's based because the teacher salary base in Washington County is much lower than in other jurisdictions, and the number of teachers could be lower. You can see that Worcester County ranks number 1 on teachers' retirement payments, but they only ranked last on direct aid. So let's turn to page 32. It kind of breaks down on a per pupil basis the aid increases. And as you can see that on a per pupil basis, funding for Washington County Public Schools will go up by around the state average of 3.4%. The primary driver on per pupil direct aid is your enrollment increase and also your local wealth increase. So if you turn to page 3, you can see that Washington County is ranked 7th with their student enrollment increase, which is above the state average. However, Washington County's local wealth per pupil has increased more than the state average of 3%. So that's kind of while your student enrollment has gone above the state average, your local wealth has increased above the state average as well. And so your state aid is really at the center of the state, around the state average. You can see a jurisdiction like Allegheny County that has the highest increase in direct aid per pupil. The factors there that's driving their state aid increases is that their local wealth per pupil actually decreased by 12.1%, which is one of the main drivers of state education aid. Page 34 just gives you some information on the main state education funding program. It's under the foundation program. It's around $3.8 billion. This funding is based on local wealth. And as you can see, Washington County ranks 6th in the amount of state funding under this program. Also, Washington County receives around $7.8 million in guaranteed tax-based funding. This funding goes to local school systems that has a local wealth below the state average, but has also have made increases in their local appropriation to the local school board. So that recognizes the local commitment to the public school system. Page 35 provides you information on funding under the blueprint. And here, Washington County will receive around $18.3 million in funding under blueprint initiatives. The two main components of this for Washington County is the concentration of poverty grants, which is around $9 million, and funding for full-day pre-kindergarten, which is around $7.5 million. As you can see, on a per pupil basis, funding is slightly above the state average. And then on page 36, it provides you with information on what we call state funding for our targeted student populations. And this includes funding under the compensatory aid program, which is based on the number of students that receive free and reduced price meals. We also provide additional resources for students that are English language learners and also students that receive special education. In total, Washington County will get $86.5 million in funding for targeted students. This is ranks 8th in the state and above the state average. And page 37 gives you some information on what drives funding for targeted funding. It basically is your total targeted student index, which basically measures the percentage of students that receives free and reduced price meals, that are English language learners, and that also they receive special educations. It ranges from around 42% in Carroll County to over 100% in 4 local school systems. And one of the reasons why this index is over 100% is that some students can both be eligible for free and reduced price meals and also receive English language learner services and special education services. Here you can see that Washington County is basically right at the state average of around 78.6%. So when you look at the share of students that are targeted, Washington County is really average. The main reason why Washington County receives more state funding on a per pupil basis than the state average is that their local wealth per pupil is below the state average. So those are the two different factors that's really driving funding under this component. And then page 38 just gives you a snapshot of what percentage of the total student enrollment in Washington County receive certain services. And as you can see, that nearly 60% of students in Washington County are eligible for free and reduced price meals. So that's pretty significant because this is a indicator for students that are at risk, that needs additional resources based on their family's income. Washington County has a below average number of English language learners, and they're basically at the state average for special education services. Okay, we will now shift our focus quickly to talk about wealth, local wealth. As we stated, Washington County has the 7th or 6th lowest local wealth per pupil in the state. And so that's a main driver on your state education funding programs. So if you turn to page 40, it kind of breaks it down to the two main components that we use to measure local wealth. One is property wealth and income wealth. And as you can see, But this is talking about the change in funding. As you can see that Washington County's property wealth has increased slightly above the state average. And also the income wealth has also increased above the state average. So when you're looking at local wealth this year, the change in local wealth, Washington County is doing better than the state average. One of the reasons why the income wealth has gone up above the state average was that last year, when we looked at the changes in local wealth, some of the more affluent jurisdictions like Montgomery, Howard, Talbot, and Kent, they had sizable increases in their capital gains, which really drove up their local wealth numbers. This year, with the performance in the stock market, those capital gains did not materialize, and you can see that for some of the more affluent jurisdictions, their income wealth actually went down. So this is something that has happened this year when you look at local wealth. Page 41 shows you your local wealth on a total basis. And then page 42 kind of breaks it down, what I was trying to talk about earlier when you compare per pupil wealth. That Washington County is ranked 19th in property wealth and also 19th in income wealth. So it has one of the lower per pupil wealth measures in the state. Page 43 kind of shows you what percentage of the local wealth base is comprised of property wealth versus income wealth. And as you can see, that property wealth accounts for around 62% of the formula, and income wealth counts for around 38%. And if you look at actual revenue attainment on page 44, you can see that this is a pretty good proxy. You can see that property tax revenue compared to income tax revenue is much larger in most jurisdictions. So it is a much better way to measure local wealth to include property tax revenues weighted more heavy than income tax revenue. I'm going to go very quickly now through the next couple of slides. It just kind of gives you the main driver, beginning on page 45, of what drives education aid. Page 45 shows you the full-time equivalent student enrollment. You can see that for enrollment growth on a percentage basis, Washington County is ranked number 7 with a 0.9% increase compared to the state average of 0.1%. If you turn to page 46, it kind of shows you the student enrollment under the free and reduced price meal count. And there you can see Washington County is ranked number 8. At 60% of their students are identified as free and reduced price meal eligible. And you had the 7th highest increase in the free and reduced price meal count. Page 47 gives you information on the number of students identified as English language learners. And as you can see, Washington County is ranked 15th at 4.8%. There's 2 school systems that have over 20% of their students as English language learners, and that's Prince George's and Montgomery. You can also see that some school systems on the Eastern Shore also has a high percentage increase. But if you look at the change in the number of English language learners, Washington County ranks number 1. You had a 26.5% increase in the number of students that have been identified as English language learners. And then finally, on page 48, it gives you information on the number of students that receive special education services. So that concludes the state aid presentation. But before we leave, we want to show you some on our website where you can access this information. And I think Arnold is going to show you that if you go from the General Assembly's webpage to the Department of Legislative Services webpage, you can go to the Budget Function tab and go right below that to State Aid to Local Governments. And this is our State Aid webpage. And all of the information that we presented today is here. You can go under Session Reports, and you can access the State Aid Overview Report that I have just presented. Right below that is our local fiscal briefing documents. And if you hit that on, you see that we have done presentations to other jurisdictions. And this weekend, we will be putting the speaking points for this Washington County presentation here. So you can access it and to your constituents. If you go under state aid reports, under the 2-year charts by program, and select Washington County, you can actually get to a 2-page report that shows state aid for Washington County in FY24 and FY25 by program. So all of the different education programs, the public safety programs, transportation programs is all listed here for you. And I know we went through this pretty quickly. If your office has any questions that they want us to walk through at a different time, we'll be more than willing to reach out to you and go through the report in more detail. So that kind of concludes our state aid presentation for you.
A lot of information there. I want to thank you for that report. Do any of the members have any questions?
I'll ask it. I'll do
Delegate Valentine.
it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is for the state aid for police, and I'm sure it's probably in the Washington County segment, how it actually breaks down further to like the local municipalities and not at the county level. Can you go into that a little bit?
Right. We are still trying to get a report from the state agency that allocates the funding for FY25. We do have the information for 23 and 24 that we can share with you. I can get back with you later today with an exhibit that shows the breakdown for each municipality. The funding should be fairly similar from year to year. So we can get back with you today on the exact funding that the county government should receive under police aid and also under the police aid enhancement in each of the municipalities that receives funding.
I thank you for that. Is there a place on the website where I could find that, or does it have to come to the office?
We'll have to put it together. The information came for statewide, so we'll have to pull it together for Washington County. Once we put the exhibit together, we will post it on our website so that everyone can have access to that.
Excellent. One of the other delegates was asking me about that as well. So it would be for the 4 municipalities in the county that
Right.
They're in police department.
We will share that information with you today, and we'll also make sure that information is posted on the website. And we will also be including information on the disparity grant that we talked about today on the website as well. So we'll have a special update on that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate. Any other questions? I don't see any. So again, thank you all for that very thorough presentation. I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you very much.
The other item on the agenda for today under new business is House Bill 967, Town of Keedysville. It's a one-line bill. Keedysville has asked us to allow them to regulate parking. As you may recall, we had a very similar bill for the town of Sharpsburg last year. It's technically not a delegation bill because it only affects District 2A, but the committee's asked for a letter of support from the delegation in order to place it on their hearing agenda. So any discussion regarding that item? Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Moved by Delegate Valentine. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Delegate Baker. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, vote by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? See no one opposed. And then I just want to bring to everyone's attention that the investiture ceremony for Kirk Downey will be held this Friday at 4 o'clock in the afternoon at Courtroom 1. Invitations were sent out, but I think they're a little bit delayed in receipt by some of us. We actually received ours just today. So just want to make you all aware of that. And again, our congratulations to Mr. Downey on his new venture. Any other members have any comments?
Thank you, Bill.
Yes. Good luck to you, Kirk.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure working with you all, and I look forward to continuing to do so.
Absolutely. We appreciate your service to the community.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Seeing none, the last item on the agenda. Senator McKay, did you have something?
Oh, I was just going to move to close the meeting.
Well, we were going to ask for public input. Anyone from the public have anything to say before we do that?
Delegate Wyville, I do.
Senator McKay, are you willing to withdraw your motion until we hear from the public?
Who wanted to speak?
Well, it's President Fry.
Oh, of course.
Does that have a
Without,
bearing on your motion?
no, of course, President Fry can
Not
speak.
non-controversial comment here, Delegate Senator. I just sent out an email a few minutes ago. We're trying a new little program with the Washington or the Frederick County Chamber on Monday, March 4th, hosted by NFIB and Frederick County Chamber. It's a way to get small businesses in front of our respective delegation members. Again, Monday morning, March 4th, 8 to 10. It's going to be at a Platoon 22 Veteran Service Center in Frederick. We're going to talk about the changes in the unemployment insurance program, talk about the drug testing in the workplace, also provide an opportunity for the two chambers to network with our delegation members. So I sent that out. It's again, you'll have the email to your offices. Just wanted to make sure you know about that. And again, something new we're trying with our chamber to the east and with NFIB. So hopefully you all can attend, and your staff members are welcome. And we just need to pre-register for you and your team, whoever's coming. So the email's out. Let me know if you have questions.
Okay, thank you, Paul. Anyone else?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Councilman Perini.
by now I presume that every member of the delegation received a letter from the mayor of Hagerstown regarding Senate Bill 1078 and cross-file bill, House Bill 1378, regarding the city of Hagerstown's water system and other issues and other municipalities. I'd like to confirm that you all actually received that letter, since you didn't bring it up on your agenda today. And secondly, certainly would like to know the delegation's intention regarding those bills.
I can't speak for the others. I am in receipt of the letter. The reason it's not on the agenda is because we're trying to work all those issues out. If they can be worked out, it will be brought back as a bill that we would vote on. If it can be worked out for this session, it'll have to be postponed until next year.
Okay, fair enough. I presume you'll give us notice on when that discussion will occur, because I noted on the meeting notice that you don't include the agenda, at least not the one that I get. Secondly,
Actually, I thought we did include the agenda, but this may be our last meeting. There are two outstanding issues. That's one of them. And if they can be resolved for this year, we will have another delegation meeting to discuss those. If they cannot be resolved, this will likely be the last delegation meeting.
okay, well, again, if you could let us know one way or the other, us being the collective others that
Yeah, certainly.
are interested in this issue and other issues. The second question I have is more general in nature. And I'm going to ask it. I don't expect an answer today, but I certainly would like you as chairman to, review this with with the delegation and get back to us, and us being the community coalition, specifically managed by Jim Kirchville and Paul Fry. And that is, is it going to be the intention of the delegation going forward to honor the requests of the community coalition, knowing how those requests come together over a matter of many months from August usually through December, in a presumably cooperative and open, transparent manner. So if you could discuss that amongst yourselves and let us know between now and the end of the session. I know the city of Hagerstown would appreciate knowing your position on that as we evaluate the participation with the community coalition going forward.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Anyone else? Seeing none, Senator McKay, did you have something to offer?
Just a motion to close this meeting.
I'll second.
Second by Delegate Baker. Thank you all. Have a good day.